Hey, excuse me, but would you happen to be Adam Graham?
The very same. And this is my old-time radio snack wagon.
Welcome to the Old Time Radio Snack Wagon, where we serve up a bite-sized portion of old-time radio. And now, here's your Snack Wagon host, Adam Graham.
In the United States, the National Football League season has been underway for a couple weeks, and so it's appropriate to do something football-related. And for that, we're turning to the series Greatest Sports Thrill. The series was one of those military recruiting programs that were so popular. This one was for Air Force reporting. And the series, Greatest Sports Thrill, would include some PSAs for the Air Force, and it would also profile the career of the featured athlete, and then include an interview with them. This one is from the 42nd episode of the series, and this series came from 1956 or 1957, and this episode featured Frank Gifford.
This is Frank Gifford of the New York Football Giants, and in a few moments I'll tell you about my greatest sports thrill.
This is Harry Wismer. What you are about to hear is a transcribed story of one of pro football's outstanding players and an event our special guest Frank Gifford considers his greatest sports thrill. And Frank himself is here to tell us all about it. But first, here is Bill Reddick with a message of interest from your United States Air Force.
High school grads, let's consider your future. You have a military obligation, and I'll bet you've been asking yourselves, what's best for me? Of course, the decision will be yours alone, but here's some helpful advice. As an airman in the U.S. Air Force, you can make the most of your military obligation. You're young, so is the Air Force. You're ambitious and want to get ahead. The Air Force is the most modern, most progressive service America has. The technical education and valuable experience available to you as a qualified airman is worth many thousands of dollars no matter where your future may lie. You may qualify for one of over 400 jobs in over 40 career fields. You'll get expert advice as to which field is best for you. Then you'll receive the finest, most intensive training there is. See your Air Force recruiter today. A secure future lies ahead for you in Air Force Blue as an airman on America's all-volunteer team. And now back to Harry Wismer.
Frank Gifford is a young man who reads poetry, visits art shows, writes a sports column, appears on television occasionally, builds apartment houses periodically, and at one time even played in Hollywood movies. Frank Gifford also happens to be a professional football player with the world champion New York Giants. But Frank is not just another football player. Frank Gifford is merely the greatest all-around football player in the United States and Canada and any other place where the game is played today. This 205-pound halfback, who was an All-American at Southern California before he cast his lot with the play-for-pay boys, is no specialist, a term given to certain football players who can do one thing well and no more. The strapping Californian presents a dazzling versatility which probably has no precedent. He, more than any other Giant, was responsible for the Giants' first pro grid title in 18 years when they whipped the Chicago Bears to become the National Football League's world champions on December 30th, 1956. Frank Gifford, in 1956, was the fourth best rusher in the National Football League with 819 yards, and the third most productive pass catcher with 51 receptions. His 606 yards via receptions made him the league's overall champion with a total of 1,422 yards. He also was his team's highest scorer with 65 points, threw passes for 2 touchdowns, kicked 8 extra points, and booted a field goal. Because of these hard facts, which are on the record, Frank Gifford was a unanimous choice on all the All-Star teams, was named the Athlete of the Month by the Hickok Selection Committee, and was picked as the Professional Football Player of the Year by the wire services, national magazines, and sporting weeklies. Yet, Frank's biggest boot came from his fellow pros when they picked him as the league's outstanding player. No football player had scored a double. That means being among the top 10 rushers and top 10 receivers in the National Football League since the league was enlarged and strengthened in 1950. Frank Gifford in 1956 was among the top 5 in both departments. Frank Gifford in college was the golden boy of the University of Southern California football team. His finest hour on the college gridiron was against the University of California in 1951. The Golden Bears had won 39 straight games in the Pacific Coast Conference and had a 14-0 lead at halftime. Then Gifford raced back the second half kickoff 69 yards for a touchdown, threw a touchdown pass, engineered a third scoring drive, and kicked 3 extra points to help the Trojans upset the Bears 21-14. Few football fans, and that probably includes his present coach, Jim Lee Howell, realize how close Frank Gifford came to not playing with the New York Football Giants. It was May 1952. Gifford, just days away from graduation at USC, and a prime commodity on the football market, rejected a $12,000 offer after some thought to play in Canada. He was not committed anywhere and was completely free to accept the offer, but he turned it down because, as he said later, he wanted to play in the United States. In 1954, Frank Gifford received another tempting Canadian football offer. He was told to name his own price. He was also told that he was one of the 5 top pros in America, that the Canadians wanted to play football up there. Money was no obstacle. Gifford was impressed, he admits, that he was considered one of the top 5 pro players, but he wasn't that impressed. He refused to jump at any price. The pattern of Frank Gifford's success with the football Giants has been doing what had to be done week after week on offense or defense. Against a particularly dangerous attack, he had been pressed into service in the Giants' famed umbrella defense. Whenever Kyle Rote was out with an injury before he was finally switched to an end position exclusively, Gifford moved into Rote's halfback slot. Or he started at the other halfback, or threw passes when Charlie Connolly and Don Heinrich were having trouble getting their aerials off. But one way or another, he's always in the ball game. Regarding his versatility, Frank Gifford thinks it's easy to switch from T halfback over to single wing halfback, but difficult to switch the other way. Gifford admits he got too high on himself twice and had to be taken down a peg by 2 coaches. In '52, when I joined the Giants, I must have acted swell-headed. Anyway, one day in scrimmage, I was buried by a ton or so of defensive players, and when I got up, Steve Owen was grinning. He said, "Son, this is a mighty tough league." He was teaching me to treat football as a team game. Then Gifford said, Coach Jim Lee Howell did the job in a different way after I was voted the outstanding player in an exhibition game with the Chicago Bears. Maybe I bragged a bit. Anyway, Coach Howell quietly asked me to look at the game movies with him. Calmly, without sarcasm, he related all the faults I had committed as they came up on the screen. I haven't forgotten the lesson Howell taught me either. Frank Gifford never had a personal football hero in college, but he adopted Kyle Rote as his model player when he joined the pros. He says he is lucky to be on the same team with the great Texan, to study and imitate his moves. There must be an awful lot of youngsters breaking into the pros now who say the same thing about Frank Gifford, the man who does a little bit of everything exceptionally well. And now, before you meet our special guest, Frank Gifford, in person, in an interview from Yankee Stadium in New York, and hear about his greatest sports thrill, here is a message of interest to all young men who want to go places faster.
When a smart fight manager sees a boy with potential and drive, he'll take great care in bringing him along. Yes, he'll develop that potential and teach him every trick in the book. And in the long run, both fighter and manager will profit by this careful guidance. And careful guidance is what makes the Air Force America's greatest defense team. The airman can choose from over 40 career fields. He gets expert advice and guidance as to which field will suit him best. Whether it's munitions, printing, supply, metalworking, or any other job, the airman is guaranteed the finest training in the world. If you haven't had the opportunity to go to college, remember this. There are 244 accredited colleges and universities providing on-base classes in the U.S. and overseas. And you'll be earning while you're learning. Nowhere else will you find the opportunities open to you as an airman. If you're between 17 and 34, see your Air Force recruiter today. You'll go places faster in the Air Force, America's all-volunteer team. And now back to Harry Wismer.
Frank Gifford, what was your greatest sports thrill?
Well, Harry, I think that I have two great thrills in participating in football, and I think they'll go back a few years, back to the 1951 East-West Shrine game, where I played with a great collection of football players, and in that particular backfield, I was playing left halfback, Hugh McElhenney was playing right halfback, and our fullback was Ollie Matson, and Ed Brown of the Chicago Bears was playing quarterback, and on that same team, we had Billy Houghton. The other particular thrill was participating in the College All-Star of that same year, where we met the... I think the big thrill about playing in those type of games is the players that you play with. You've read about them from all over the country, and finally you get to go up against them and see what kind of ball players they are. And as it turned out for me, Harry, they were real good friends, and I've made a lot of close friends that have kept through the years. I think those two would probably be the two greatest thrills that I have had out of football.
Frank, what is the story behind the New York Football Giants making you their #1 draft choice?
I think that probably goes back to the fact that in college I had, as a line coach at USC, Mel Hine, a former New York Giant football great, when we came into New York to play Army in 1951. Apparently he recommended me very highly to Steve Owen, who was coaching the Giants at that time, and the following January I was picked #1 by the Giants.
What have you found to be the big difference between the coaching you received at USC and what you are now getting in the professional ranks?
Well, Harry, I think the main thing is that we go in for a lot of technicalities here with the Giants. At USC, everything had to do with fundamentals, and you were, for example, given a pass pattern of going down 8 yards, breaking to the sideline, and that type of thing. Well, here we work all week long on the movies of the team that we're going to play the coming week, and we work against personnel, and we know that when we say have a down-and-out route, we have no particular yardage to go on it. We are given a lot of leeway in how the back covers us, and we generally know pretty well in advance how he's going to cover us, if he turns to the inside or drops his left foot back, and we break out accordingly. I think the big difference would be that everything is done just about the same, only goes into a lot more technicalities into the personnel that you're going to play.
Triple threat backs are a rarity these days, Frank. You think more players should learn to pass and kick as well as run?
Well, in the National Football League, it's a little difficult because we have a lot of specialists, but I think for just downright fun and enjoyment in playing football in high school and college, I think that anyone that has the ability or the natural inclination to pass and kick and run, I think they will enjoy the game a lot more if they take part in all the phases of it.
Frank, is there one ball game in your football career that you wish you could play over again?
Well, Harry, I think going back to our 1956 season with the Chicago Bears, I wish that we could play that entire ball game over again and, of course, have the same conditions, except for that last 6 minutes when the Bears came from behind at 17-3 and tied us 17-17. I think if we could go that whole ball game over, just those last few minutes, that game would have been a little different.
Frank, is the play ever changed from the time you leave the huddle to the time the ball is snapped at the line of scrimmage?
Well, Harry, quite frequently we'll go up to the line of scrimmage. I would say quite frequently. I would say it would be about 50% of the time we'll go up to the line of scrimmage and see a defense that we weren't expecting, or the particular play we have called in the huddle won't go so well against. And then our quarterback has a system of calling automatics, of course, which I won't say here, but he does have a way of changing the play to a better play, a play that is better suited to the defense that we meet when we come up to the line of scrimmage from the huddle.
Frank, what is the most unusual play you've ever participated in or seen yourself on the gridiron?
Well, Harry, I don't know whether it was the most unusual, but last season, the 1956 Chicago Bear game, I keep going back to that, but I saw one of the greatest catches I've ever seen made by a football player, and I'm sure that the 55,000 people in the Yankee Stadium agreed with me when Harlan Hill made a diving catch in the last 56 seconds of our ball game with the Bears and caught the ball as he was on his knees with our defensive halfback on his back to tie up the ball game 17-17. I think that was the greatest catch I've ever seen in football, high school, college, or professional, and I certainly hope that I don't see many more like that against us.
Frank, what was the funniest thing that ever happened to you during a football game?
When I was a sophomore at USC, we had a dog as a mascot. He was a mongrel type of thing that stood about 3.5 feet tall, and his name was George Tirebiter. Well, the first game we were playing was against Navy, my first varsity game, And as I came off the bench with the defensive platoon to go into the game, the dog got off the leash of the student manager who was holding him, and he tore out the seat of my pants. And, of course, we had to take time out and put on new pants. And I don't know whether it was the funniest, but it was by far the most embarrassing I've ever had happen to me.
Well, thank you very much, Frank Gifford of the world champion New York Football Giants.
Greatest Sports Thrills with top personalities in the world of sports is narrated by Harry Wismer, directed by Gene Kirby, written by Arthur Suskin Jr., and presented by the United States Air Force in cooperation with this station. This is Bill Reddick speaking. The preceding was transcribed.
Welcome back. 1956 was actually the peak of Gifford's great NFL career, although he had 3 more Pro Bowl appearances after that. For many of us my age, even those of us who weren't big NFL fans, knew Gifford. He was a fixture of sports coverage, not only on Monday Night Football for 27 seasons, but also in the wide world of sports, and he also covered the Olympics. And he invariably showed up on programs even not related to sports. His wife, Kathy Lee Gifford. Gifford was both a college and Pro Football Hall of Famer. Between his playing and broadcast career, he was a fixture in the American world of sports and a part of many people's greatest sports thrills. It's time for me to close up the old snack wagon, but don't worry, we'll be back with another serving of old-time radio goodness before you know it. If you want to enjoy some of our longer form podcasts, you can feast away at my website at greatdetectives.net. Your emails are also welcome at adam@snackwagon.net.
The Old Time Radio Snack Wagon comes to you from Boise, Idaho. Your host is Adam Graham. Sound production is by Rhines Media, LLC. You can listen to past episodes of the Old Time Radio Snack Wagon as well as connect on social media at our website at snackwagon.net. Email suggestions for episodes to adam@snackwagon.net. This has been the Old Time Radio Snack Wagon.
Until next time, goodbye.